Two teams with a lot of playoff history going at it. Detroit and Washington, Saturday night.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. It is a Thursday. Locked On Lions and Locked On Commanders. A crossover Thursday brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Matt Derry, host of Locked On Lions. David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. We got Detroit and Washington Saturday night. Round 2, NFC playoffs. Lions off a bye, Commanders off. Of course, that big win the other night over the Tampa Bay Bucks. Mentioned it before. Our crossover Thursday brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. Use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Some history here between these two teams. And David, a lot of connections too. There's so many folks with the Commanders, whether it's front office, whether it's Zane Gonzalez, everything. Former Lions sprinkled everywhere. Should be fun Saturday night.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I was joking with Martin Mayu, who of course worked for the Lions organization at 1.2 and worked for the Buccaneers organization. And I told him that we're kind of on this like Martin Mayhew revenge tour. Not that there's actual revenge because Martin doesn't have any animosity there, but it's just, it's always fun to kind of make those attachments. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. In history, this franchise undefeated against the Lions in the playoffs.
That's right.
But, that history doesn't really apply here. So it's not like there's any curses of anything going on, but we'll see. We'll see if the Lions can do that, because I'll tell you, Matt, like I've loved the Lions story. I was in at Ford Field last year for the divisional round when the Buccaneers got eliminated. The atmosphere was electric. I mean, to this day, the most electric atmosphere I've ever been in. So I'm super pumped to get back in there and just experience the game with all the Lions and Commanders fans that are going to be in the stadium. And honestly, man, I mean, if the Commanders get eliminated this weekend, like I love the Lions story and what they've done so much that I'm going to be pulling for the Lions to win the Super Bowl. So, it's going to be a lot of fun.
We're burying the lead here, but let's go back to your relationship with Martin Mayhew. What does he say about his time in Detroit? Because you're right, class guy that, timing for him was not very good.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That conversation was definitely more my side than it was Martin's side. He just kind of laughed it off and was like, "Yeah, we are seeing a lot of teams that I used to, be affiliated with and all that stuff. It's going to be good to go back there. He's got family there, you know what I mean? So he's looking forward to that, and they'll be at the game. So yeah, there's like I said, it's all love. And he's got, I think all of these guys understanding the grind of what they go through. It's actually funny. An unrelated conversation that we had that same day. Talking about like off season and all this stuff. He says we don't even call it the off season. We call it the non-season, because as we all know, the NFL never sleeps. So they just call it the non-season, not the off season, because it's not like there's any breaks going on.
Tell me about what storylines stand out for you as this very young team, obviously led by a young quarterback, comes to Ford Field. What jumps out at you?
Yeah, I think defensively starting there, Marshon Lattimore struggling in his first playoff game with the Commanders is something that kind of stands out, going up against, Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is bona fide, Hall of Famer in pads. You know what I mean? Like, this dude is going to be in Canton. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And in my opinion, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So 5 years after he decides to hang it up, he's going to Canton. And hopefully I'll be there to see him go in there because he's a great dude. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not a Hall of Famer walking, right, but certainly on the path. I think that's fair to say that he's on the path to carving out a Hall of Fame career. Sure. So, when you look at him in real time, two great wide receivers, you can make the argument of which one is better. They certainly both do a little bit of different things stylistically. So the question is, what quality of Marshon Lattimore are the Washington Commanders going to get? Because the better quality Marshon you get, the better it frees up your defense to kind of do other things. If you can put Marshon on Amon-Ra, and look, he's going to get his, you know what I mean? But you look at Marshon and say you're going to keep him from just taking over the game, then it allows you to use those other 10 guys to worry about Jameson Williams and the plethora of weapons that I don't need to rattle off in this moment. If he struggles a little bit, still has a little bit of that rust going, then they got to give him a little bit of help. They got to roll some guys over there. It just kind of stresses the defense a little bit more. Defense coordinator Joey Jr. told us he got one full speed practice before that Bucs game, coming off of that hamstring injury that he aggravated against Philadelphia Eagles. But this week he's getting all the full speed practices. So he's pretty confident that Marshon Lattimore is going to be able to break off some of that rust. So I think that's going to be a big part of it. Marshon played 79% of the snaps last week. You know what I mean? If he can get a little bit more than that and be a little bit more effective, then I think that's going to be a big part of how the Washington Commanders can try to counter what the Lions bring.
Thanks for making us your first listen, everybody. Checking us out, of course, wherever you get your podcasts, and follow David, follow myself. Check us out on our YouTube channels as well. Got to throw that in. All right, what about offensively? I know what I saw against Tampa. Certainly, I mean, Jayden Daniels is special. We've talked about it, and Scary Terry and some of the guys are fun, but I noticed left tackle as being a big problem. How concerned are you about that this weekend in that very raucous Ford Field?
Yeah. The rookie Brandon Coleman didn't have his greatest game, against that Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rush. And to be fair, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pass rush is one of the better ones. They're near the top of the league in creating pressures. Todd Bowles does a lot of exotic things, and obviously center Tyler Biadasz is the one setting the protection. So how much of that is Tyler Biadasz getting fooled and calling the wrong set? How much of that is Brandon Coleman simply getting beat? The tape can tell you some of that, but not all of that. I think that what is interesting, Matt, is that early on in the season, something the Washington Commanders were doing a lot more of was chip blocking. They were lining up tight ends offline and putting them in their position to chip block on their way out. Receivers like Luke McCaffrey were doing really well at chip blocking before they went out. I go back to that Cleveland Browns game. I mean, that was months ago now, but Myles Garrett going statless against a rookie left tackle is unheard of. And it certainly Brandon did a good job on his own, but that was the chip blocking really helped to accomplish that. And they've kind of gone away from it. Not that they don't do it, and they may even still do it more than most teams in the league, but they just haven't been doing it as much as they used to. Not really sure what the theory behind that or the mantra behind that is, but I do believe that this weekend against the Detroit Lions, you're going to need to see that a little bit more. You're going to need to see some more of those chip blocks, some more of that helping out Brandon Coleman specifically. Because, if you have one lineman struggling, it trickles down to the rest of the line. And that's not something that you want to have in that environment against that defense, especially.
What about Jayden Daniels and the poise? I mean, did you expect it to be this good? Obviously, 5 straight wins that have all ended in the last possession. The throw against Philly. He's been great, but did you expect this?
No, I mean, I don't think anybody can say they expected what we've gotten from Jayden. Poise is something that you really have to experience. Like you can turn on the LSU tape and you can see the swagger, and then takes a big hit, gets right back up and wants to go back at it. You can see all those things, but until you really experience it, it's hard to really put a feel to it. And going back to rookie minicamp, man, like he came in and took charge, but it wasn't like a cocky star quarterback first pick of the draft for the franchise, number 2 overall pick. It wasn't that kind of a confidence or swagger. It was just kind of natural, and I remember the big question for us being, all right, well, when the veterans get in, how's it going to be? And it was the same. And I remember Terry McLaurin being really impressed and telling us in an interview, they ran a route during early practices and they disconnected and they went to the sideline. And, Terry's used to guys being like, okay, next time we run it, we'll do better. But instead, Jayden came over to him and said, hey, man, what did you see on this? Here's what I saw on this. Okay, cool. After practice is over, can we run it a few more times to work on it? And he was just taken aback because he's like, that's not something you usually see from a young quarterback. And then we get the stories of him doing his own walkthroughs before the official walkthrough, which I always laugh. It's like the pre-planning meeting that everybody hates at work. But for a quarterback, that's really valuable. And even doing post-workout stuff. It's not stuff, conversations that I can fully report on or whatever, but I've seen him, other guys are in meetings and there's no quarterback meeting. And I've seen Jayden Daniels walking into the outside bubble while he has nothing to actually officially do to get some more work in, to do some more things on his own. Like the dude loves ball. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Like this isn't a job to him. It's a passion. You know what I mean? And it's something that no matter what he's doing, we talked about the bye, is it going to be good to get away from football? He's like, yeah, never really away from football though. Like the dude just bleeds and breathes football. And that's why no matter what environment he's in, no matter what's happening to him, he's always having fun. There's a clip. I think it's 4 or 5 Falcons defenders. If I remember correctly, the game, don't quote me on the game. There's a video out there of him getting tackled by like 4 or 5 dudes at one time. And in the midst of being tackled, he's laughing. You know what I mean? And it's not like a disrespectful, oh, you're soft. It's like, it's a dude having fun playing ball. So I think that's where a lot of that poise comes from. But no, man, it's been incredibly impressive.
You hear the Commanders story. Let's get some storylines about the Detroit Lions. Of course, the 1 seed in the NFC, fresh off a bye. We'll do that next. David will throw some stuff at me, Matt Derry, David Harrison. Locked On Lions, Locked On Commanders, Thursday crossover. And Crossover Thursday today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Here we go. First whistle to the final drive. Playoffs are here. FanDuel is going to make the playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get, $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps getting exciting every single week. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Lions Commanders. Currently, FanDuel has gone up from 8.5 to 10. Get in on it if you want to at FanDuel. Make this playoff season unforgettable with our friends at FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Matt and David with you, Locked On Lions, Locked On Commanders, Thursday crossover. Always great to talk to David Harrison. Find him everywhere on this network, by the way. You're a busy guy. I remember when you were doing the Bucks. Weren't you doing both shows at one time?
I was.
You were everywhere.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, so what do you got for me, David? Obviously, the Lions storylines, off a bye, needed it badly. Hadn't had a bye since week 5. Very banged up. Hopefully getting Terrion Arnold and David Montgomery back. I think they will. Kevin Zeitler is going to be a little bit of a question mark at right guard. Very good player whose hamstring's a little bit iffy right now, but I think he's going to try to give it a go. But other than that, storyline here is everybody's ready for it to play a game again after a couple weeks off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been listening to some Detroit Lions, press conferences and locker room interviews, and I think every guy kind of talks about that. And it's interesting because you mentioned the Locked On Bucks podcast. My last episode was that divisional round episode. Once the Buccaneers season was over, my time with Locked On Bucks was over. Hopefully, I'm not flying home from Detroit off work anymore. This time around, it's going to become one of those traditions for me to go to Detroit and then go into my off-season mode, I guess. But my question there, you kind of already mentioned it there. I want to talk about Kevin Zeitler. Like that to me is going to be big. A little bit of a bias there. I was really heavy on wanting the Washington Commanders to go after Kevin Zeitler. So obviously I've got an affinity for him. I think he's a really talented dude. And we talked about the offensive line. Like if one piece struggles, then the rest of it can really be impacted by that. So how big of a concern is the potential of Kevin Zeitler not being able to play against this Commanders defense?
See, I'm with you. I love when the 5 starters are out there. Look, every game you're going to have some things happen. Lions played without Taylor Decker for parts of this year. They played without Frank Ragnow for a game or two. Zeitler's been out. Penei Sewell's pretty much been there, knock on wood, every week. But they've got a kid in Christian Mahogany, and I know you followed the draft, who they took in the 6th round, who they really like. And so Graham Glasgow missed a game at the end of the year, and Mahogany filled in nicely at left guard, did a really nice job. And I think people were like, wait a minute, he was sick for most of the preseason. He was deactivated, wasn't ready. He finally started practicing. And I think they feel like with Zeitler on a 1-year deal, look, they'd love to bring him back, and I think he'd like to come back. But if he were to walk in a multi-year deal, and look, the Lions can't pay everybody. They've already started paying most of their guys. You can't keep everybody. I think they'd be comfortable putting Mahogany in there either at left or right guard. Glasgow's moved around his whole career. So not a huge drop-off if he's not there, but this O-line is kind of the heart and soul of this team. And when one guy's out, it could cause some problems, especially with some of those interior guys that you guys have in Washington that are very, very good.
Yeah. I would love to sit here and be like, Chris is a dude that I saw pre-draft, and man, I really liked him, but that's not true. But I'm super happy to see. I was doing some studying last night, and I saw that, and I was like, man, this dude has been balling when he gets a chance, and that's all you can do, especially as a rookie, drafted where he was drafted. So happy for him to do that. But yeah, if Zeitler can't go, Joe Witt Jr. is kind of a straight up dude. It's like, he's not really the kind of guy who's like, well, here's where I think your new weakness is, so I'm just going to overly exploit it like some defensive coordinators will. Some of that frustratingly, right? The Buccaneers lost Jamel Dean, their starting cornerback, last week, and there were some Commanders fans who were like, why aren't they targeting his replacement and just going after him like some will do? But Joe, he just kind of sticks to his game plan. So that's kind of the plan there. But obviously, if Zeitler can't go, that's going to be a point of emphasis that everybody's going to be watching. You mentioned that line, Matt, expanding. I was already offended that the line in this game was bigger than the line between the Texans and Chiefs, but that's a different discussion. But I think that line is spreading because Bobby Wagner, Commanders linebacker, hasn't practiced at all. Thursday, we'll see if he can go at all. Look, he's the kind of vet that can miss practice all week and still play, but you'd love to see him get at least one practice in to have some confidence there, right? if Bobby Wagner can't go from a Lions perspective, run game, middle of the field pass defense, how much of an advantage do you think that gives the Lions versus with Bobby Wagner in there?
Oh, I think it's huge. And look, that's a solid, that's that you mentioned Hall of Fame with Mike Evans. Bobby Wagner's going too. So that's the kind of loss that could really affect the Commanders. Look, you're talking about that fast track at Ford Field. So I always like to say the Lions really put up a lot of points. This offense is something else. And now you're finally starting to see at the end of the year, Jared Goff and Sam Laporta have that kind of connection that they had last year. Sam didn't have a Pro Bowl year this year, and that's okay. He's a second-year, sophomore tight end, if you want to say, in the NFL. Really good player. I think no Wagner could mean middle of the field for Laporta. Obviously, St. Brown lives and eats in there. And the Lions running game getting Montgomery back. Look, even without Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs was playing like I'm not going to compare him to Barry Sanders, but it's close. I mean, he was the numbers he's put up have been unbelievable. More touches. And that's the thing I mentioned on the Wednesday show. All right, Montgomery comes back, but they used to start games with Montgomery pounding you for 4 or 5 yards. And then second possession, they bring Gibbs in. There's no way you can't have Jahmyr on the field to start the game. He has been that explosive, that lights out going back 3 weeks. The San Francisco game, the Minnesota game, the Chicago game, he's been unbelievable. So that 1-2 punch is pretty deadly. So any guys that are out, whether it's Wagner or whomever, will definitely cause problems. And as you saw all year, I mean, the Commanders finished 30th in run defense. I know it's been better lately, and the DVOA geeks, like our buddy Pete Bukowski loves it, see improvement there, but keep an eye on that. Ben Johnson, yes, he wants to be creative. There's the little Ben Johnson-Washington storyline, but bread and butter is still running the football and setting up that play-pass game for Jared Goff.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So talking about that run game, David Montgomery listened to his media availability this week, and he mentioned, one, that his knee feels better than it did before it got hurt because rehab was so successful, which I don't know if I really believe that, but hey, if David believes it, I believe it for him. But then he also said something interesting to me, which was, I'm just trying to go out there and do what which is what he calls, his name just escaped me. Jahmyr Gibbs. Wow. He says, I'm just going to go out there and do what John needs me to do, which very clearly, taking a back seat to the younger running back. Is that the sentiment in Detroit, or is that just because he's coming back from the injury type of thing?
No, I mean, I think all year it was the two guys. I mean, they have this nickname Sonic and Knuckles, and there's T-shirts, and they come into they come to the stadium together, all sorts of stuff. But really, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, when Montgomery got hurt with that MCL, the thought originally was he's going to be done for the year. Dan Campbell, who's very transparent, one of the only NFL coaches I ever hear that he'll talk injuries. Jim Harbaugh refuses ever, and here's Campbell saying, "Oh no, he's going to probably be out for the year." Got a second and third opinion, and now he's going to be back this week. But yes, I think over the last month, we've seen this emergence of Gibbs, both in the pass game and the run game, that is just, you can't keep him off the field. He's that explosive. And the receivers block for him, whether it's Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tim Patrick, these guys are out there blocking for him. They love going 12 personnel with Brock Wright and Sam Laporta. So, Gibbs is a star. And it's really risen with Montgomery being out, but they'll tell you they're very close. And in a 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you need that yard. Not saying Gibbs can't get it, but Montgomery carries people after at the point of attack. So he's been pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we got to talk about the Detroit Lions defense. I know the offense has a lot of attention, but that defense deserves some love too. There's this stigma, call it whatever you want. There's this claim out there the Detroit Lions defense doesn't do well against mobile quarterbacks. Dan Campbell kind of said, "Look, show me a defense that does do well against mobile quarterbacks. Like, that's not just us. That's just kind of the nature of the beast." Where do you stand on that, Matt? Do you think is that a concern for you? Like, the Lions can't stop Jayden the way that the Bucs were concerned about it, or do you think Dan's right and it's just he's going to do damage, but overall this Lions defense has what it takes to stand up to Jayden and what he does on offense?
It's interesting, David. You bring up a great question, because the last few years I would say yes. I would go, what are they going to do against so and so? Early in the year, what I loved that they did, they bracketed Kyler Murray, and really, he never really went and ran on him. And I thought you saw the depth of the linebacking core that day in Arizona, and it was very early in the year, like week 3. But regardless, you saw a difference. And I think you see that this linebacking core, despite all the injuries they've had, and now they have Anzalone back along with Jack Campbell. It's better. Then Josh Allen came to town about a month ago, and all bets were off. I mean, the defense couldn't stop you or me back there. I mean, it was just that type of day. So I don't know if it creeped up that there's another. That's just Superman, man. Like, that's just Josh Allen. Lamar smoked him last year. But I think in this case, I'll be interested in seeing how they do. I think they're better because I think that linebacker room is the best it's been. And when you talk about tackling, you also have to include Brian Branch in there as sort of this hybrid safety corner who's kind of back playing corner again with the injury to Carlton Davis. Branch can really tackle. So if Branch is missing Daniels on a few runs, then we'll go, uh-oh. But if it's Branch making that tackle and turning a 4-yard run, a 14-yard run into just a 4-yard run, then we can have that discussion. But I'm a little concerned, but I'm not going crazy. I like the way that linebackers have played and what Aaron Glenn has dialed up as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see because Jayden does a lot of damage to a lot of people. When I heard Dan Campbell kind of say, like, look, everybody struggles, I think it's interesting because I think you have to move the marker a little bit on what struggling really is against quarterback like Jayden Daniels. Like, if he rips off 45 yards rushing, 240 yards passing and things like that, I don't know if I would call that struggling per se. That's just kind of you face Jayden Daniels. But now if he gets 80 yards rushing and 280 yards passing, now maybe, okay, we can get into the realm of you struggled. But yeah, it's two very physical teams, two very aggressive teams. I mean, I kind of jokingly wanted to just Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell to come together and do a handshake and say, look, no punters. Punters are inactive. Let's just make the long snapper, the kicker, the punter inactive. Let's just put dudes out there and just see which set of dudes wins this game. It would be electric. It's not going to happen, but it's still going to be electric.
Yeah, Dan Quinn was doing his best Dan Campbell impersonation that last game. Everybody on social media was loving that. So, All right, coming up next, let's get into our third segment. Talk about some key matchups from both of us and what does it take for these teams to win? Matt Derry, David Harrison, Locked On Lions, Locked On Commanders Thursday crossover. And our crossover Thursday today also brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? So that's happened to me. And I've had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money makes it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Everybody's got things that they forget that they subscribe to. Get rid of some of those things and use Rocket Money to your advantage. Cancel those unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thursday crossover, Lions and Commanders getting ready for Saturday night's game, 8:00 Eastern on Fox. Yes, David, Tom Brady, Ben Johnson, and Lance Newmark all in the same building.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. How about this? Give me some matchups. What stands out for you on the Commander side that maybe concerns you or that you like in terms of what you're seeing on the other side?
Yeah, I think what really stands out is, again, Marshon Lattimore versus Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like you want to see best go against best, and I don't think Marshon Lattimore is going to follow Amon-Ra so much as, he's going to have his assignment. This look, it might be the X. And if Amon-Ra just happens to be the X every time they get into those looks, it's going to look like he's following him a little bit. So there's going to be a little bit of following, a little bit of not following, but I don't think he's going to be attached to his hip. So Mikey Sanders, still the rookie out of Michigan, has been a greatly impressive rookie cornerback for this team. Started off in the slot. They had to move him outside out of a necessity, and he blended into that outside position beautifully. Usually you see a rookie corner have to move positions, and you get a little concerned because that's a hard position to play your first year in the NFL already, but Mikey made it look easy, and it's been incredibly impressive. However, against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, his size did show up. It's really the first time where I noticed his size in a matchup, and it's not something I enjoyed seeing. Mikey's 5'8", but I keep telling people he plays like he's 6'2". You know what I mean? And he really does. So I need to see if that can kind of return in this game. I don't know if that was just, maybe rookie nerves, the first playoff game, or if the Buccaneers were doing something specifically. But whether it's Amon-Ra, whether it's Jameson Williams, or trying to help with, stopping the perimeter run and making a play there. Need to see Mikey playing big again. And I'm confident that his confidence has never wavered, but I'm confident that we can see that version of Mikey again. And then Quan Martin, those three DBs, Quan Martin keeping the lid on defenses. The Washington Commanders are top 10 in preventing explosive passes against opponents. And I think Quan Martin has been a big reason why. Talking to Quan, he's very excited for this competition because he knows, like, if you want to be known as one of the best, you got to go up against the best, and you got to perform. So he's looking forward to the challenge this weekend. But I think that is going to be, as much as Jahmyr Gibbs is going to do, David Montgomery. I actually look back at the Lions' losses, and like offensively, it's not like these players weren't getting numbers, right? Like you look back at the Lions' losses, guys are still getting numbers.
Oh yeah,
but the opposing defense is doing enough to prevent the Lions' numbers from taking over the tempo of the game. That's what the Commanders' defense has got to do, is prevent the Lions. They're going to produce, but don't let them produce so much that they just run you out of their own building.
No, I think that's all great stuff, and I think you're spot on a lot of things. I'll add in on the Lions side. I mean, the Kingsbury-Glenn matchup is interesting. Aaron Glenn has been getting interviews for head coaching jobs again, just like Ben Johnson. Aaron has done an unbelievable job. Everybody's like, he's ready to be a head coach. He's really out-schemed the opposing team's OC, or even Kevin O'Connell 2 weeks ago, the head coach. I mean, Aaron Glenn put on a show, and then of course Chris Shula kind of did what Aaron Glenn did last week. So against Minnesota for the Rams, and that worked. They attacked Sam Darnold, which we could talk about all day here. But bottom line is, I just think Cliff Kingsbury has done such a great job there that now it's all right. How does Aaron Glenn? You're right. Limit what Jayden Daniels can do with the football. Linebackers are, like I said, have been better. Pass rush has been okay. It was great against the Vikings because they sent a lot of people. They blitzed a lot of people. Will they be able to do that with Daniels' escapability? Darnold has none. Daniels has a lot. So what's the chess match between those two guys? I think is interesting. And also, I want to watch Frank Ragnow and Deron Payne, and I just think that's fun to watch. I think that's one of the best centers in the game. I know Deron got hurt the other night with the finger, but I like watching him play too. I just think he's a game wrecker at times. So I love that interior of the Commanders' D line. Lions interior of their O line's been good. So like that'll be a fun matchup to watch. What do the Commanders do? How do the Commanders pull this off, David? What stands out that maybe is something that they do it well, they can spring the upset here?
Yeah, so I think the three things that the Commanders have to do, and I try to do this, Matt, and I pull no punches on it. I try to tell my listeners, if they do these three things, they will win. Like I tell you, I'm guaranteeing as much as I can guarantee as a show host that they do these three things. If they green check mark all three of these things, they will win. Those three things this week. No more than 60% of the Lions drives can produce touchdowns, and even 60% is iffy, right? Even 60%, you're kind of on the cusp, and this is where I'm putting myself at risk because the Lions could get 60% touchdowns on 60% of their drives, do these other two things that potentially still win because they're that good of a team. But I went back through and I looked at their losses. I looked at the close games that they had, the one-score margin of victories that the Lions had, and that pretty much seems to be the sweet spot. If you let them score, if they get say 5 scoring possessions and 3 of them are touchdowns, you're probably going to lose. But if you can get that to 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 6 or 2 out of 4, whatever it is, then you have a better shot. So that's a big one. Gibbs and Montgomery, obviously massive parts of this game. What you can't do is let them take over the game. The Washington Commanders did a very good job against Bucky Irving and Rachaad White last week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that's a good warm-up for this group. I really like Rachaad. I really like Bucky. I think Gibbs and Montgomery are just better. The line is probably a little bit better. So at least specific in some spots. Tristan Wirfs is all-pro left tackle, but I think it's not a copy paste. You can't just defend the Bucs run game and then copy paste it to the Lions. But if you can prevent Gibbs and Montgomery from just fully taking over, then that'll give you a fighting chance. And then you have to get the Commanders' ground game going besides Jayden Daniels. That's something that's been missing. Brian Robinson has not been the same in really over like the last month. Chris Rodriguez is the other power back. He was inactive against the Buccaneers. They've got 4 running backs on their active roster, so usually one of them is inactive. Chris was the guy who's inactive. I kind of feel like they need to have him active because if B-Rob can't get it going for whatever reason, they need to try to get Chris Rodriguez in there because what teams don't do, this, Matt, they don't run against the Lions. However, statistically, and stats, can be deceiving, the Lions are actually giving up 4.1 yards up the middle, 4 yards per run on the perimeter. Some of that might be that they're dropping back in pass sets because they're leading games. Certainly context matters in those numbers, but the bottom line is if you can get the running backs involved as a part of this game on the Commanders' offensive side, it only makes things easier for Jayden and makes them more dangerous.
On Detroit's side, number one, and you're right, by the way, Austin Eckler's in-laws live here. Little known fact. So
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Nice little homecoming for him. Oh yeah. Here's what's interesting. I think for the Lions, it's simple. I mean, this crowd has got to be revved up, and they will be. I mean, you were in this building last year for the Tampa game. I just think rattling Daniels early, let's say there's let's say Commanders get the opening kick. Let's say there's a penalty, something. You get him pushed back, and you get that crowd revved up from the beginning, and you kind of just rattle this. He's been unrattleable, if that's even a word, all year. But, man, this is the Ford Field. This is the second round. And just get in his face a little bit. I think the way that they just completely took Sam Darnold away from Jump Street 2 weeks ago is the same type of scenario. I'm not saying they're going to hold the Commanders out of the end zone. I mean, I don't think the Lions defense is going to do that this week. But that was something else. So I think that's very, very important. Jack Fox is a big weapon for this Lions team. And I know people are going to go, punter? Yes. Yeah. Field position. Keep making the Commanders go the length of the field. This is not Dan Fouts to Wes Chandler and John Jefferson here. Weird. We're recording very early, so my mind is all over the place. But this isn't even Theismann and Alvin Garrett and Art Monk. So, make him go the length of the field. If Jack Fox can do what he does, pin the Commanders back deep to where it's 1st and 92, and they got to go, from the 8-yard line, something like that. Field position, I think, is a factor in this game. And we talked about before, I just think the Lions safeties are so good with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. If those guys are doing what they're doing, not allowing the big plays, making the Commanders really have to work in the 3rd and longs, I think it'll be a good day for Detroit. But I'm not one to sit here and tell you, I'm stunned that the spread is 10. I think that's high, but I do get it. Detroit's rested. They're at home. And, but I'm still going to take the Lions to win. I'm not going to give you a score yet, but I don't know how big you are on predictions here, but how do you see it?
Bobby Wagner is a big question mark. I'm really nervous to see what Dan Quinn's going to say Thursday. I anticipate even if Bobby doesn't end up playing, he's going to say, well, we're going to take it right back, write down the games. I will work him out beforehand and all that stuff. But I think you have to understand why the Lions are favored, in this game. Not only all the stuff that you just said, but also the Commanders are coming off of a short week. You know what I mean? They played Sunday night. Now they're playing Saturday night. They've had to congest, their schedule. They basically missed their day off, so to speak. You know what I mean? So that's a big part of this. It's a long season, all that stuff. And what's really playing in the Commanders' favor right now, I think, is having that Week 14 bye. When the schedule came out, everybody saw that Week 14 bye, 3rd year in a row, by the way, that this franchise had a Week 14 bye. Everybody's going, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. You got to be kidding me. Now you're kind of appreciative that you had that Week 14 bye. The week off in December, you're kind of like, okay, I'm okay with that. We'll see, man. But the big thing for this game too, and Commanders fans know it. If the Commanders get the ball in a 1-score game with less than 5 minutes left, it's just kind of what they've done. 5 wins in a row, winning on the last drive, last possession, last play of the game, and it's kind of what they do. Eventually, there's going to be a game, Matt, where they don't pull it off. Commanders fans are just going to be hoping that this isn't that game, and Lions fans are going to be hoping that it is that game. But we'll see. I understand why the spread is what it is. I still think it's too big, but I understand why the spread is big. I just think that the Commanders, if you do go Lions on your picks, maybe don't take the points. Maybe just go money line on that. Or if you're a Commanders fan, definitely take those points if you're gonna put money on there. But look, you mentioned punters, man. Trust me, no Commanders fans are gonna scoff when you mention the punter because they know how valuable a punter can be. Tressway is a legend around these parts. Yeah, no question about it. David, great stuff. David Harrison, Locked on Commanders. This guy's everywhere. Check him out wherever you get your podcast. Matt Derry, Locked on Lions. This has been the Thursday crossover, folks. Saturday night, 8 o'clock for Detroit and Washington in the divisional round. We'll be back again on Friday with our shows as well.